many Bermudians were not aware of what actually had
A lot of
transpired.
Bermudians, no, we're not.
From Ms. Lister, who is an anthropologist, and she mentioned a concept of race amnesia in Bermuda. Would you agree that it would seem that in Bermuda, due to many factors as to the big mercantile elite, these sorts of things were just simply erased from history or conveniently forgotten about when we learn about history in Bermuda?
Well, story about this history.
Sure.
It'd be in November coming.
Okay.
Now, I was born at a time when Bermuda was in its height of segregation. It was rampant. It was corrosive all through the place. You know, we couldn't go to this restaurant. We couldn't self-serve in the theater. We couldn't get a drop down Front Street working behind the counters. All kinds of absolute nonsense. And it was all supported by the government. We had an education system as far as a apartheid education system, which I think was inferior. Was high school, never went there. So, but history was one of my favorite subjects. Of England and all this other stuff. The only thing it had in this one little tiny paragraph, oh yes, we did have slaves, and that was it, right? And then it went on, and this book was written by Canon Arthur Tucker,
Okay.
right? And I used to sit down in this class. There were 1,000 students there, and I didn't see no whites there. I didn't have no white teachers, didn't have nothing. We have all these black people around here. Where did they come from? Why is there nothing written about them?
Right.
I mean, I look around the neighborhoods. The only other people I see in the neighborhoods living were Portuguese people. There were a couple of families like that. That I decided to take a deep interest in history, and I decided it was important for me to find out who I was, to say that I must be somebody around here because I'm here, instead of being taught just how to carry the sweep a broom. Listening to my grandmother talking about Pakistan and all that sort of stuff, I decided, well, let me find her. Let me do my family tree with the hopes of finding out. Because I was brought up from a little boy, I never had no father in my house.
Okay.
And growing up, I always thought I never had a daddy. You never saw the man. He wasn't there. I guess I must have dropped out of the sky. Well, after learning my family history, Bermuda. I'm related to everybody. Every time I turn around the bend, I mean, I'm related to people I never knew I was related to. So it went from getting to know about Pakistan, went from learning who I'm related to in my family. What had went, how it all went.
So after 2007's big other work that was done by yourself or the Pakistan Historical Society until the SCO that was
Going down to the archives and getting information, we were doing whatever research we can to find out. We were interviewing certain people, elderly people like Mrs. Rainwright.
okay.
I had a conversation with a lady. Oh dear. She's one of the very old members. One of the older members too. Talbot.
And do you interview many years ago? Do you think that might be something you can get?
I don't have it. I just have to. I myself don't have it, but
Okay.
I would have to find out where it is. Where it's at.
I think there's a bit of history and something to help the commissioners making their decision as paragraph 17 that you participated in a protest against the granting of the SDO.
Yes, that's when they wanted space for housing.
Okay, and that green space was going to be over the cemetery. Is that kind of what the
Well,
plan
all
was?
around, all through Tucker, all through different areas of Tuckertown.
Okay. Was on what basis? Do you recall?
Well, we felt that, we wanted to save as much green space as we possibly can, and we thought that, I think it had something to do also with the, some tree, I can't remember the name of the tree that was growing, that Mr., oh gosh, what is his name, I can't remember his name right off here. My brain is burning out a little bit, But he used to be over Nunsuch Island, Mr.
Yes. Okay,
And
and
that was part of it. It was about destruction.
mentioned that you became aware of the ground penetration survey that was conducted by Dr. Trigg, who came to Bermuda from Canada.
Yes.
And he was able to, in October of 2011, attend the grave site. Sorry,
Yeah, they
cemetery.
did some work.
You understood that. Sorry. He was able to refute what Dr. Harris had previously presented in terms of the actual size of the graveyard.
No, that's number 17, right?
18. We're going on to 18 now.
all right.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, I think that was when they had dug up all the
After that, restoration.
down. Yeah, this restoration or whatever. Well, yeah, after they fixed it all up and they had it all painted up nice and they then went turned around and then dug it all up.
Okay, and then if we continue on, so you go on to talk about the desecration of the cemetery in 2012 and my arrival on the scene. So, as you mentioned earlier, you went down to the cemetery on the 16th of October 2012 after someone called you to say that the graveyard was being desecrated.
Yeah.
And you attended the cemetery with Danny Richardson and Keith Dubois, also
Yes.
of the Tuckerton Preservation Society.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and that when you attended, you found, as you showed us in the Royal Gazette article, there's pictures, and generally you gave us your sentiments on what you thought of the Tuckerton Cemetery.
Yeah.
Okay, and if we go all the way down to your paragraph 25, that again would be a clear, accurate view of how you felt about this whole situation.
Yeah.
And if you would be so kind as to read that out, I know you mentioned it previously, but if you could read that out for us, just for the benefit of everyone,
Number 25.
please.
this makes me extremely angry and gives me the feeling that the people that lived in Pakistan, that toiled were satisfied with their community and way of life have been disrespected because of who they were. If Queen Victoria was buried down there, they wouldn't have done this. There would probably be an honor guard down there still protect as a descendant.
Okay. Okay, and then if we continue on to indicate some where you mentioned on expropriation, expiration. Sorry. So you go in your paragraph 26.
Yeah.
You indicate that you don't.
Yeah.
That you didn't believe that Turkestan was appropriated for a public benefit.
Right.
Can you kind of indicate to us?
What do I mean by that?
Yes.
Looking at the period, but let me say this.
Sure.
Bermuda had gone through a hard time from World War I, I think it was. And you can't complain about a government that wants to, rejuvenate the economy of the country. You can't. Economy and rebuild tourists and get the, because at that time Bermuda was an agricultural country. But the thing that they put together a committee of people in 1919, I think it was, to go up and down the country, Bermuda, looking to find us somewhere to build this new tourist complex. And they found 9 places, which they came up with they eventually settled on Turkestan. In Turkestan, the whole, from where I see it, the people of Pakistan was moved out, given whatever the people who were in the government on the same board of the Bermuda Development Company. I was concerned. Now to say to me that, we're going to give jobs overall, this will bring jobs to the overall Bermudan hood, that's great. But what do I say if I'm a landowner in Pakistan? Well, yeah, ain't that nice? They forced me out. I like that, but I could not. I could. It used to be my, and I'm not glad I'm a. And the people that's making the money off this hotel were the same people that sat in the House of Assembly, passed legislation for this thing to. Now there was I have a from 1924, 25, somewhere about that period, of a shareholders meeting being held by one of the main law firms in Bermuda, of the Bermuda Development Company. I would really like to see who those shareholders were.
Sure.
And we're talking about at a time, and it'd be Tom project, not that project. Okay, we couldn't even go into the hotel. We couldn't go to the front door. Okay. and watch somebody else sitting on the board. It's hypocritical, contradictory.
Well, Mr. Stavo, I want to thank you for your evidence. It's been very helpful to the commission. But at this time, we have Reverend Whalen who's present from the Marston Church.
Sure.
The Marston Church, of course, was given adverse notice, as there may be comments that go against the church or may shed the church in a bad light. So Reverend Whalen is here, and he may ask you some questions. So we're going to give
Yes.
Reverend Whalen the floor and see if he has any questions for you.
Yes, sir.
And then after that, you'll get some questions from the commissioners. But Justice.
Thank you, Pastor Whalen. You may go ahead.
Yes, good morning,
Morning.
Justice and Commissioners, Council. Good morning. Good morning. Ask a couple of questions. Recall when Morrison and the Tuckerstown Historical Society worked together and addressed. I think one of the early meetings was June of 2007, I think, when we went down to Tucker's Point. Grievances and concerns that we had. If you recall, and about the driving range. I don't know. Right. So, do you recall what our primary grievances were that we Tucker's Point Club?
I think one of the main grievances that I could remember was the golf course and all around, because I've been down there myself and saw golf balls all over the place.
Right, right. And I believe we were also addressing, after the first issue in terms of
Yeah.
whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know about with the church in terms of having over the years and the time, there's been numerous meetings between myself, trustees of the church, and other members of the Tuckerstown Historical Society with regards to dealing with the cemetery. And I think some of that was reflected in your evidence today with the service. You showed the pictures of the service. I think question with regards to Dr. Triggs. And I think you would recall at the invitation of Dr. Harris.
Yeah.
Right, so he was working, and so his evidence, I think counsel had asked a question with regards to his findings refuting Dr. Harris, but I don't think that was the report. Was there anything in Dr. Triggs
Well, the only thing that I myself don't recall, yeah, I don't have it, no report. I don't have, but I was made to understand that Dr. Treeks, I don't want to get it all twisted up here. Yeah, of course, he just did the doggone penetrating thing.
Right.
That the graves up top were not real. They were just something that was just put there.
Well, I must admit that I don't believe I had known that you had taken ground penetrating survey indicated, and I'll come back to the issue about the grave tops, but the ground penetrating survey showed that there were some graves outside the walls. Were you aware of that?
I heard, heard something like that, yeah.
Right. So it's my understanding that that area where the grave was where the wall was actually knocked down.
Mm-hmm.
Were you aware of that?
That's what I heard, yes.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't, you know, the bulldozing of the wall for no reason. It was.
Said it also is that
Right.
we felt that as being descendants, offsprings of descendants of the desecrated, as Tuckerstown Historical Society, we felt sort of let down that no one didn't tell us what was going to take place. We weren't actually in the loop of that.
Right. And in hindsight,
we
that was wrong. Yeah.
someone called us up, called me up anyway. Right there and down, you know,
Right.
what the heck's going on here? So I got a hold of Du Bois, Mr. Du Bois, and Danny. We went down somewhere inside somewhere in a statement somewhere I read, whereas you made a statement, I think it was to the newspaper, that the concern of the cemetery was more in the care of the Methodist Church for I've got right. We took an attitude towards
I
that
can
too,
understand. Yes, sir.
right? Why we would have been left, and that was the reason why. Like if we were nothing, that's my blood down there. My the history of my people.
Yeah, I apologize for that perception. Indeed, in hindsight, I think because we were working together.
We went to the church, or we went. Originated from the old Tuckerstown Church, right? And then we were getting together to work to discuss what we think could be done with the cemetery, or what help we could get to maintain the cemetery. That were that to be done, said, right? Sort of knocked us off. They said, "Well, what do you mean? I mean, well, nobody know. we're not important."
Well, it wasn't. I don't recall that statement, but certainly it
Well,
wasn't
it's
the
written,
intent.
it's right in the paper,
Right,
right in the
okay.
newspaper.
But it wasn't the intent of the church to. Right, because happen. We have tried to have some coming together and to try to resolve the issues with the former ombudsman, for example. The meeting, I don't believe you were at the meeting with Arlene Brock, with Dr. Ferguson.
No, no, not no.
But the other Historical Society attended. And it has to do with the intentions of the church. You recognize the trustees of the church and the members of Mars
Yeah.
and so
Some of them people we was the same grandfather I had,
Right,
great,
right,
great, great
right.
grand.
yes, sir.
Yeah.
And so it would not be in the interest of the church or the trustees to desecrate its own cemetery. I mean, that wouldn't make too much sense, would it?
No.
First of all, you've addressed it, and I've agreed with you that probably a lot would have been avoided if Tuckerstown Historical decision that was made upon the recommendation of Dr. Harris and this ground penetrating survey. The pictures that showed an earlier state and then a later state with these concrete. There was some kind of tops, right? Mm-hmm. But it wasn't the concrete tops that ended up being added later. Those tops were
Well, apparently those tops, there weren't no original tops. I mean, they were concrete tops. Somebody made those tops up. I don't know where they come from.
right.
Right. They like I said, there were no tops on the graves when I went down. When I first saw this, no tops at all. And there were no tops laying around anywhere.
Right.
Right. So I don't know. Those things were put on there. I don't know exactly when they were put on, but I mean, they were there whitewashed though and all.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. So
And
that
the
was
graveyard was cleaned up and
Sorry.
the hedges were trimmed.
right.
But in one of the pictures, if you see the pictures, in some of the pictures, they're not painted.
Right.
Right. But they were painted some time after. Like
Exactly.
I don't know exactly when they were painted after that, but
Right.
when they were exactly painted.
Right. So part of what Dr. Harris had recommended in terms of removing what he called the far sarcophagi, which these tops that were added to the original state.
Supposed to do, yeah.
Right. Okay.
That is it, Mr. Whalen? Those are your questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Thank you very
Trustee.
much.
Thank you.
Council and Mr. Stubble, we're going to take the lunch room at 1:30. When we resume, commissioners would like to ask some questions, Mr. Stubble. So
Yes.
depart, and then we'll resume at 1:30.
Okay.
Thank you.